Previously on the American Justice Podcast.
Vincent never told me that he killed the girl, and I never told the police that he did it, and he still tells me that he didn't do it.
So here we are 15 years later, and he's still maintaining his innocence. A lot of times people will, if they are guilty, they'll kind of come to that, they'll kind of settle that within their own brain, and they'll kind of, own up to it and say, okay, you know what, they got me. I did it. But here we are 15 years later, and he's still very adamant that he had nothing to do with this.
Right.
There is an epidemic in America's criminal justice system: the prosecution and conviction of innocent people for crimes they did not commit. Welcome to American Justice. The American Justice Podcast Army works to free men and women wronged by the criminal justice system. It's not only about the innocent who have been imprisoned, but also the victims of the crimes as well. No one deserves justice more than them. And now, here's your host, Scott Pogensey.
Hello, AJ Army. Welcome back to your podcast. Last week, we finished up with day 3 of the Vincent Cosey murder trial. This case has me confused all kinds of ways. From not having any recordings of the witnesses to trying someone for the rest of their life because of a possible ear witness? Man, you can't make this stuff up. All right, let's get going with the first part of the last day of trial. Take it away, DJ.
It's a hot one, like 7 inches from the midday sun. Well, I hear you whisper and the words melt everyone, but you stay so cool. My Mona Guitar, my Spanish Harlem Mona Lisa.
At first, this is going to feel a little strange, but trust me, we finally get a witness on the stand who isn't law enforcement, considered to be a professional at anything whatsoever, and represents themselves in an educated, law-respecting fashion. American Justice Army, Joyce Ward takes the stand. The judge asks one last time if anyone in the jury has seen or heard anything regarding this case in the approximate 16 hours that they've been gone. They all reply with a collective, quote, "No," and she believes them without question. You mean to tell me that there's so many things going on in Racine County, Wisconsin, that not one of these 12 people heard about this case on the television news or the radio or in the newspaper or over breakfast in the village cafe? I smell bullshit. Strong bullshit, and destined to be fanned into the faces of the masses by the defense team's pom-pom routines. No, I will not let that go. Joyce Ward is Vincent Cosey's ex-girlfriend. This is why you've got to treat them right, fellas. You never know when you're going to get railroaded on a murder charge. Oh, the prosecution is going to call them. Don't you worry about that. Either part on good terms or don't part at all. The legendary ex-girlfriend will be the slam dunker of the courtroom, and they've been waiting on pins and needles for the perfect opportunity to talk mad shit about you. She's known Vincent since he was 13, and she's a hairdresser. This is getting worse by the second. Take the plea, Vincent Cosey, take the plea. A former good friend of mine was a hairdresser. Notice the, quote, former part? Yes, this girl couldn't keep a secret if it was covered in sticky tape and handcuffed to her wrist. Apparently, Vincent Cosey called Joyce at 8:50 p.m. on the night of Stefnee's murder. Here come the questions. Why is Vincent calling his ex-girlfriend if he's dating Stefnee Goings? Dirty pool, Mr. Cosey, dirty pool.
And now, hang on to your hats. Keep your arms and legs inside the ride at all times, because it's time for a rider's note from head writer C. Derick Miller.
I feel as though I must interject. I have several friends who are of the opposite sex who remain my friend to this very day. Even though I'm happily married, I still communicate with them in limited quantities on social media. Social media wasn't really a big thing in 2006, yet, unless you're trying to pin a murder on someone, Mike Etherington, and calling her on the phone may have been the only way to get in touch with her. Maybe Stefnee was out screwing around with some other dude who killed her, and Vincent was upset and needed someone to talk to. Since they'd known each other from childhood, perhaps she was his confidant. Perhaps I'm grasping at straws, or maybe I'm hitting the nail directly on the head. Perhaps Stefnee was out driving around with the multiple convicted, more violent Cosey brother who the police never bothered to investigate.
Also, they'd just stopped being boyfriend and girlfriend on December 18th, 4 weeks before the murder. See Derick Miller's birthday. He adds this information in here just in case any of you would like to get him a present. Wait, I see what he did there. That sneaky bastard. I love it. Anyway, Ms. Ward says that Vincent wanted to meet with her so the two of them could talk. Here comes the speculation. Perhaps he wanted to speak with her to confess in regards to what he had just done, or it could have been the C. Derick Miller theory. Perhaps Stefnee was out with her other numerous guy friends and Vincent was just torn up about it. After all, they had been off again, on again for a long time, and they really cared for each other. I don't know. I get the feeling from talking to Vinnie that he likes Stefnee, but he didn't really love her. So who knows what he wanted to get together to talk with Miss Ward about. Maybe he wanted to get together for a little chicky pow pow since he wasn't really getting any from Stefnee that night. Who the fuck knows? It's all speculation at this point. When I talked to Vincent, here's what Vincent had to say about their relationship and when he actually saw Stefnee that night.
All right. Well, tell me about Stefnee and tell me about your relationship with her.
Yeah, we was in an on and off relationship, whatever. You know, I basically was seeing somebody else when I was seeing her though too though. But so I was messing with a couple of different ladies at the same time, whatever. So me and her was really just an off and on relationship thing, you know. But at the time, though, me and her weren't really together, but we still talked it, you know what I'm saying? But we weren't together at the time, though. But we always conversated or text each other regularly, though.
And you guys at the night that this happened, you guys were together at a certain point in time, correct? Or the afternoon?
Earlier that day, I seen her like about 5:30, whatever. I took her to get something to eat, which I told them where I took her to get something to eat because it's a McDonald's, a bank, JJ's Fish, all of it was connected right there. So if they would have went back and looked on the camera, I took her there, and right up the street from there, I dropped her off, whatever, and you know what I'm saying? That was the last time I seen her throughout that day, so.
And after you dropped her off, were you guys still in contact with through text messages or calls or whatever?
Yep. She called me around like 7:35 that night, whatever, and we talked for maybe like a minute or two, whatever, and that was it. And then she ended up text messaging me at like 8:20, 8:21, 8:24, and 8:30. So if somebody with you, why would they need to keep text messaging you if they with you?
The state notices that Joyce Ward wears glasses, and they'd ask her to read something. For a second, I had a My Cousin Vinnie flashback and thought the state of Wisconsin was going to totally rip off that courtroom scene where Joe Pesci holds up fingers from the opposite end of the courtroom to see if the elderly woman could tell how many he puts up.
Now, Mrs. Riley, and only Mrs. Riley. How many fingers am I holding up now?
Then again, this is a prosecution doing this, and it's their witness. Perhaps they're establishing how good her vision is with corrective lenses? She claims she saw Vincent in his blue Chevy waiting for her at a stop sign. He pulled away from the stop sign rather than making contact with her, basically standing her up. This is not the perfect witness for Vincent Cosey. The ex-girlfriend who you called to meet up but then just stood up? Nope. An eternity in prison gives you a lot of time to think about life's many screw-ups, I'm sure. This might be in the Cosey top 5. Ms. Ward had every intention of getting something to eat, taking a shower, and going to bed, but people started calling her. Remember, this is a super small town. Not even a town, a village. Caledonia wants you to know how small it is by calling itself a village. We've had this conversation. Everyone knows everyone. Word got out quickly that Vincent Cosey's girlfriend had been killed. People thought she was the one who'd been murdered since the victim was being described as Vincent's girlfriend. She claimed to be afraid of Vincent showing up at her house, so she left. Why fear? Had Vincent been violent in the past during their relationship? After all, they'd known each other since the beginning of their teenage years, and that leaves a lot of room for behavioral error on his part. She went to a place called Vipers, which, honestly, doesn't sound much safer. Didn't River Phoenix die at a place with the same name? The Viper Room, I think? To me, it just sounds like the shadiest bar imaginable. But then, I Googled it. After all, it's free and in your pocket. It is the most well-lit, whitest of white bars I've ever seen photographed. Remember, Caledonia, the village that it is full of white people. Still, everyone knew that someone, particularly Vincent Cosey's girlfriend, a member of Caledonia's microscopic black community, had been murdered. While on the phone with each other during his incarceration, she asked him point blank if he killed Stefnee, and he hung up the phone. Not ready for a confession, or just tired of hearing about it? No one is sure, except for the jury, right? I mean, I haven't come across any evidence yet that blatantly tells me that Vincent Cosey is responsible for Stefnee Goins' death. Have any of you? Morales cross-examines. Ms. Ward states she didn't want to talk to Vincent and that he should have been talking to his bitch instead. Joyce is obviously very upset about the breakup with Vincent. Why? Joyce had broken up with him because of Stefnee. According to her, Vincent was cheating on Joyce with Stefnee when she dumped him. According to her, Vinnie was cheating on Joyce with Stefnee and she dumped him. I think we've established Vinnie was dating several girls at once, and when they found out, he just moved on to the next. That makes him a player, not a murderer. The phone call in question? She was going 1,000,000 miles an hour asking Vincent all kinds of questions on the phone, which, indeed, is tripping. At least, I think that's the definition. Here, let's look it up. Google. It's free and you know the rest by now. Okay, so the Urban Dictionary claims tripping is when, quote, someone is overreacting or getting all bent out of shape over something small. Well, murder isn't necessarily small, but I guess in the end, it's all in the eye of the beholder as to whether or not someone is truly, quote, tripping. Who are we to determine the level of, quote, trip that Joyce may have been doing? She claimed to never be afraid of Vincent before. It was just because of what other people had said. That's interesting. In all the years that they've been friends, Vincent never did a single thing to cause her to have fear. The fear she had was created by the other people around her telling her something in one small instance. Interesting. Man, I hope she never has to be a character witness for me. She continued to visit Vincent after he was incarcerated. Now, personally, if I thought someone I knew was truly guilty of murdering someone, I don't know if I could continue to go out of my way to visit them regularly in jail. She even put money on his books in the jail regularly. would you continue to financially assist someone that you knew had killed someone? I honestly don't think I could do that. They used to live together and even slept together once after breaking up. Not only am I smelling a little bit of motive here from Joyce, but now I'm really not sensing any of the fear that she mentioned before. They broke up, she got mad, they continued to sleep together, he continued to see Stefnee, and then Joyce snaps. Wait. Again, I'm giving Racine County 2 additional suspects that they never bothered to investigate: Ernest and Joyce. Feel free to mail my badge to the American Justice Podcast, Dallas, Texas. Everyone was talking about the murder at the Viper Club that night. How small is this town where a murder can happen and 2 hours later, everyone knows every detail, even more than the damn police? Too small. So small, it's a village, not a town. The more I read, the more I believed that no actual police work was done. The cops heard rumors and ran with it. Mr. Repeshak redirects. Joyce claims to have never asked him again if he murdered Stefnee since the one time in question. She stated that some things are just better left unsaid. Yeah, I would go with that too if I could have been considered a suspect at one time or another. Unfortunately, no one is asking if she had anything to do with the murder of Stefnee Goins. I mean, if people can be incarcerated for murder because the investigators believed it was done because someone was gay and coming out, then I guess someone could get away with murder for cheating on their partner. Actually, infidelity in a relationship is probably the number one reason for murder in this country. I haven't officially looked that up, but I can imagine it's number one. If only there was a tool where I could look that up. Nah, I'll check my pocket later. Maybe it's in there. Okay, so Ms. Ward steps down and investigator Elmer Toby Shea takes the stand. He is a patrol sergeant for the Village of Caledonia Police Department.
And now, hang on to your hats. Keep your arms and legs inside the ride at all times, because it's time for a rider's note from head writer C. Derick Miller.
There are a ton of misspelled words in the final pages of the court transcripts. No pride or professionalism from Racine County whatsoever. From the investigators, to the DA's office, to the judge presiding over the case, and all the way down to the person who types the transcripts, no one in this case has really given a damn about how things are perceived.
He was called in to work on the night of the murder to assist with the investigation. He claimed it was about 30 degrees on the night of the murder. Wait, throw on the brakes. The judge stops everything. There are witnesses in the courtroom who have already testified, but are still under sequestration. No one on the defense or prosecution team noticed or even tried to stop this. The judge had to look up, notice, and deal with it. Anyway, investigator Shea noticed that there were no drag marks to the location. This means that Stefnee fell exactly from where she was shot. She wasn't shot anywhere else and then taken to a dumping spot. And the people in the home next to where the body was found were home and heard absolutely nothing? I find this very hard to believe as well. Did anyone bother to see if those people owned a gun that matched the caliber of bullet found inside Stefnee Goins? No? All Vincent Cosey from the very beginning because someone claimed to hear what could have been his voice on a phone call. Shaking my head even 16 years after the fact. He and another investigator sifted through the leaves on a tarp in the middle of the roadway where the light was better, and they located a projectile. They were also able to locate Stefnee's purse, identifying her. He interrogated Vincent's sister, Tatiana, at her residence. He claims that Tatiana Cosey stated Vincent confessed the murder to her on the telephone that night, that a gun accidentally went off while Stefnee was standing outside of the car on 4 Mile Road. They did not take a written statement from her at this time. A search of the family's landline phone indicated that Vincent called his mother's house at 12:41 a.m. on the morning following the murders.
Vincent's mother was with a man named Ernest, and she had a son named Ernest. I have a problem with this. I could never date someone with the same name as one of my kids. What if you're doing the dirty in the middle of the night? Scream your partner's name in the heat of passion, but your kid opens the door thinking you were calling them. I know Vincent Cosey's mother was a little up in years, but she could still be doing the hibbity-dibbity from time to time. It could totally happen. Nope, not even worth taking the chance.
Oh, see, Derick, this is why I love you. All right, so Shay interviewed Tatiana later that morning, and her story had completely changed. If you remember correctly, she wasn't consistent on the stand either. Still, this is why statements should be taken as soon as possible, and any interaction or questioning with potential witnesses or suspects should be recorded, whether it be audio or video. It was the year 2006. All of these things were readily available. She stated that her family would be upset if they'd known that she'd be providing information to the police. I mean, snitches get stitches, especially in a family, right? He claims there was a lot of traffic going on from Cosey's phone to Stefnee's, but none the other direction. Now, since the phones of either were never found, they have to rely on the phone records for this accusation. Now, since we've determined that the phone records provided only account for the phone calls, could Vinnie have been calling but Stefnee replying by text message only? He claims he spoke with Tatiana at 12:39 a.m. on the report, but it should have said 2:39 a.m. There's a mistake in his report that he never corrected because the reports had already been filed. A 2-hour difference. This entire law enforcement organization in Caledonia and Racine County are dropping more balls than a deep fryer at a mountain oyster festival. That's actually a thing, you know. I've seen it advertised on billboards in Montana. People gather there once a year and have a ball. I know. Leave the comedy alone and stick to true crime. Okay, so Lieutenant Keith Stannis takes the stand. This is the head honcho of the investigation. He was at a Thai restaurant in Milwaukee at a Christmas party when he got the call about Stefnee Goins. Murder aside, this sounds like a horrible evening even before you add death into the mix. Thai, Milwaukee, Christmas party, and cops? Wait, wasn't it already halfway into January? Who in their right mind has a late Christmas party? Was he confused about the reason for the party, or did he just work with a bunch of idiots? I've got my money on the latter. He actually touched Stefnee's body, and even though he verifies it was 30 degrees outside, she was still warm to the touch. Again, they roll back around to the information given by Felicia Jones, even though it is speculation and she never actually saw Vincent with Stefnee on the night of the murder. As an officer, the fact that Vincent was blowing up Stefnee's phone prior to the time of the murder, but made no phone calls after the murder, implies that Vincent knew that she was dead. It seems to me the whole damn town knew that she was dead. It doesn't mean that he killed her. If Vincent didn't kill her, but knew she was dead, why would he continue to call her phone? In hopes that she would spring back to life and answer the phone? Stannis claims that Vincent's mother stated that Vinnie confessed to killing Stefnee. He also claims that Tatiana stated that Vincent confessed to killing Stefnee. No one got a written statement from Tatiana while she was being quote-unquote truthful and talkative because it wasn't their top priority. Also, in my opinion, no one recorded any of this shit on video or audio because they wanted to find a way to pin the murder on Vincent Cosey, the easiest suspect imaginable. Case closed. What were their top priorities? Verbatim from Stannis on the stand.
Well, first of all, Vincent wanted to kill himself, according to my sources, which I heard most of the evening. So I had concerns that this young man, first of all, was going to kill himself. My second concern was that police officers were looking for him aggressively. They were searching, stopping cars, stopping people on the street. So my concern was that the officers' safety, Racine and Caledonia and the Sheriff's Department officers, and any other officer that could have been in a situation that may have been deadly.
No other Cosey family member provided a written statement, just the mother and the sister. He also claims to have listened to conversations between Vincent and Tatiana during his incarceration in the county jail and during the investigation. Suddenly, a legal issue arises regarding jailhouse phone conversations, and the jury is dismissed for lunch. Wait, does that sound familiar? Refer to the American Justice Podcast Season 1 for a refresher course. You're not allowed to listen to inmate phone calls between the inmate and his attorney, unless you're in Hunt County, Texas, and then it's all right. Luckily, that is not the legal issue at hand here in Vinnie's trial. The defense thinks this information shouldn't be presented to the jury, but the state is all over it. The defense claims that they've never heard the conversation, but only read what Stannis had provided to them as a transcript. Repeshak claims, the district attorney, that it was on a CD as part of the discovery, and it's not his fault that the defense never listened to it. It is then stated that the files were copied, but the CD was never provided to the defense by the district attorney's office. The transcript from Stannis regarding the jailhouse conversation is pure hearsay without the defense getting a chance to hear the conversation themselves. After all, if Stannis is providing a transcript, quote unquote, for the phone conversation, how do we know that that's actually what was said unless we can listen to the phone calls themselves? He could have made up all kinds of things. All right, we're going to stop right there for this week and pick up part 2 of day 4 next week. But here's a sneak peek. The judge gives less than a fuck. Okay. All right, AJ Army. Thanks for sticking with us this week. We'll see you next week to wrap up the last day of the trial. After next week, we'll have one more week with a wrap-up and lots of opinions coming your way. Until then, remember to stay aware, stay strong, and get involved. Bye.
The American Justice Podcast is owned and copyrighted by Atua Productions, LLC. Your host is Scott Pogensey, and your writer is C. Derick Miller. The theme music for the American Justice Podcast has been created and composed by Josh DeRosa. Atua Productions aims for this to be an interactive podcast where you, the audience, has a great amount of influence on the content of our shows. You can interact with us in several ways. First, and most preferred, is you can leave us a voicemail. Our phone number is 972-942-0444. Be sure to leave your name and the city you're calling from, along with whether or not we can use your voice on the air. If Facebook is more your style, you can log on to our Facebook page at facebook.com/American Justice Podcast. Feel free to leave a comment, or you can message us on Messenger if you have a more pressing question or issue. If you would like to blog about the show, then you can log on to AmericanJusticePodcast.com and tell us what you think there. You can find many of the documents discussed in this episode there as well. If you are a tweeter, you can also voice your opinion on Twitter at @AJusticePodcast. If you would like to support the show, you can do so in a couple different ways. First, consider visiting our Patreon page at patreon.com/AJPodcast. We have different levels of support that include t-shirts, guest call-in spots, and early access to our podcast and YouTube shows. Next, you can like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to get notifications of when we publish episodes. We would also very much appreciate it if you could give us a 5-star review. If you have any comments about the show, or more importantly, any tips on the case we're discussing, please call 972-942-0444 and leave us a message. After all, if the subject of our podcast is innocent, that means someone out there is guilty. American Justice Army, Let's find him.